Welcome everyone to another 9X tool demo in the 9X tool demo series. So before we jump into the main event, we're very excited to have Torben from Rows joining us today, but I'll give you a little intro into 9X and who we are. So we're a Berlin-based company and we help fast-growing companies scale their business through what we call no-code operations. So what that means is we typically work with team members of business functions, so whether that's marketing or sales, customer service, HR, finance, or ops. So generally, people with a business background without any programming or engineering expertise. But we teach them how they can leverage these new no-code tools and software to automate their process and build internal tools and become a lot more efficient in the work that they do. So in the work with our clients, we get to interact with a lot of new tools and no-code tools out there. So we thought we'd put together this weekly series where we can share these amazing tools that we discover and hear a little bit from the people that are actually building the tools. So yeah, I'm very excited this week to have Rows on board. For me personally, that was sort of my journey into the whole automation world started with the spreadsheet. So I definitely became a spreadsheet geek and nerd before moving on to other automations. I think the ability to really able to manipulate a lot of data in one go. I remember that first Excel function where you can just drag it down and you're sort of extracting the first name from a string and these sort of things. And I think all of us, myself, Piv and Alex, we really worked a lot with spreadsheets early on. What's great about spreadsheets is when you have the data in there, then we were very fine and comfortable with, I guess, using some more complex functions. But what was always a problem with using spreadsheets is, I guess, the manual work of bringing data in and then also sharing the analysis that you do out. And that's where Rows really stood out to us when we first discovered it, the ability to connect the spreadsheet with multiple data sources, automate a lot of things is something that's really exciting. So yeah, I'm really excited for this tool demo, and then I'll throw over to you, Torben. Welcome. And yeah, maybe you can get started with telling us a little bit about the background of Rows, how you guys started and what you're trying to build.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Excited to be here tonight. Let me tell you a bit about Rows and myself first before jumping into the demo. I will keep kind of the general demo kind of somewhat shortish. So if you have questions or want me to cover anything else, then I'll be happy to do so. So well, I started Rows basically to help myself or people like me. So I can code only a very little bit, and I would never be able to code an application that helps me in my job. But I can use spreadsheets more or less solidly through my professional background as a management consultant and then a founder. So Rows is the second company that I founded. So therefore I kind of embarked on this journey to build a new spreadsheet. And we also saw when we founded the company more than 5 years ago that, well, people were looking actually for automation opportunities in spreadsheets and also, well, for a way to turn spreadsheets into better interfaces. Because, well, this technology that so many people use, and as you said, it's kind of the mother of all no-code tools in a way, right? So, or maybe of productivity tools. It's quite an old technology. So Excel is 40 years old. Google Sheets is older than the iPhone. It's been built before there were kind of, well, apps, smartphones, and well, many APIs and many SaaS businesses that, well, we need to connect data from one to another and so on. And that's why we built a new spreadsheet. Yeah. So, and what you can think of is for Rows, we want to build you a more modern spreadsheet for analysis and for reporting. So you have a full spreadsheet, which means that we support kind of all the major functions that well, Google Sheets and Excel offer to you too, and an interface of a grid. We also offer you a so-called live mode, which is an interface that is more solid. So you can turn essentially any spreadsheet into a web page or a web app that is, well, more robust. It looks better. It's responsive on your cell phone. You can still make it interactive with certain fields that you can set for the end user. We also want you to be able to pull in your data from your data sources easily, and even, well, support integrations to pull data out as well, or to send emails, send SMS, send Slack messages, and so on. Yeah. So that's what we're building. I would quickly show you the product. Yeah. So should I take over the screen?
Yeah, take over the screen. And while you're setting that up, what I forgot to mention at the start, if you do have any questions throughout the demo, please feel free to use the chat. Then Torben, I guess I can point them out to you if it's about something we're showing right now, and then we'll also have a Q&A at the end. But yeah, use the chat, and then we can answer the questions as we go.
I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but I won't have it open.
No,
so
I'll cover it for you. All good.
Also on the company, so I already mentioned we founded the company more than 5 years ago. We are 36 people now. Most of us are either in Berlin, Germany, or in Porto, Portugal. And we're kind of, well, VC funded by mostly by Lakestar, Excel, and Cherry Ventures here from Berlin, raised about 25 million so far. So now you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
And one thing as a caveat already, we are experiencing some storage issues with our Google Cloud today. So in case you see unusual loading times, I already apologize. That is unfortunately dependent on Google today, and we are asking them to work faster on it. But I think
it's funny how these always tend to happen on demo days.
I think always fine, but yeah. So okay, I just created an empty spreadsheet, and I will kind of show you kind of building small things, building step by step, rather than showing you kind of large pre-built spreadsheets. So you can extend this grid. We start pretty small for a reason that I'll show you in a second, but you can extend any table to 500 columns and to 100,000 rows. Yeah. If you create a new table, we insert it vertically inside a page. Okay, so we have this concept of a page. This still means that if I have a number in here and I use a function like sum to work with the number in the cell, it essentially also, in terms of the formula language, works like two sheets or two tabs in another spreadsheet, right? So if I change this number, the reference will update. Yeah, and we create a page, this vertical concept of a page, or which is kind of a group of tables, because we think in this in a spreadsheet as a web app, yeah, so that you can organize your information in a better way, maybe only have an input in here and then have an output table in there for better reports that you can scroll through on your phone, etc. Yeah, so that is why we have this concept. Now, I will show you, but you can add several pages as well, so you don't need to remain in just one page. I will show you just to start with how to build an interactive analytics report. Yeah, so, and I will start with an input, which is a date. As I mentioned, if you want to make your spreadsheet or your published spreadsheet interactive, we have certain fields. So you have a button, you have an input field, a drop down, a date picker, a checkbox, and here I want to pick some dates or a date range, like let's say September, and this will be an input field that I can use later on. And now I want to get some data, in this case from Google Analytics. So I go to this actions menu and I type analytics. So I see Google here as an integration, and then I can pick some of, well, some actions or functions that interact with the Google Analytics API. So if I just pick this one, custom analytics, that lets me do a lot of different things. I have this form to fill out. This is essentially building a function, but in an easier way. I have this little interface in here. I could also just type the function into the cell. This would also work. There would be an autocomplete, but that helps as well. But this is the most, well, this is the easiest way. So it's quite deeply integrated. So I already have all my IDs here of my connected Google Analytics account. I already connected the Google Analytics integration previously. So I just pick one of those IDs, sorry. As a date range, I could like pick dates here or pick something which would create a function as a date range. But as I already created my input cell, I can just refer to it. Then I can pick metrics. Again, this is quite deeply integrated. So I can just search for any object that Google Analytics has to offer. So let's pick sessions and page views, for example, and then I can still set a dimension, which means a dimension in time for my report. So for example, year week. Now I go to the next step. This now I already called the Google Analytics API. So I already got my Google Analytics data in. It's in this little cell. In a couple of weeks or maybe months from now, you will actually see a table already now. Yeah? So we are kind of shortening the time to value here. But for now, I still have to pick my tables. So I can just pick some columns or, well, also uncheck them if I want. But I'm actually quite happy with these 3 columns. So I create this data table. And now I have my data in my spreadsheet table. I can now do this the same for data ingestion for different data sources, and then I could build a dashboard with my spreadsheet functions, like for example, well, query or sum ifs, count ifs, index match, VLOOKUP, and so on. But in this case, I just want to create a chart to visualize the data. So we have these charts here. A chart, again, gets inserted vertically inside the page as its own object. So it looks a bit prettier than in normal spreadsheets, where the chart is just on top of the grid line. So I can still name this. I can still unbound this range so it behaves more dynamically. And then I can still drag this around in my report. Now, before sharing this, or before kind of sharing this as something that is more like an app, I can still choose what I want to show. So we have this little eye icon here where I can choose whether this element in the page should be visible or not. And for example, let's say this, I really don't need it. And maybe not even the raw data. So I will choose this now. And now for my sharing, I have different options. So I can just invite any of you with your email address as a guest to this spreadsheet. I can also toggle this on and invite you as full workspace members. I can set different roles, so either as an editor or as a live user, then you would only see the live view and you would not see, for example, those hidden tables. But I can also share it with the link. So link-based sharing to anyone who has the link as the live view. I can publish it to the community. This would be, let's say, for example, 9X wants to showcase a couple of spreadsheets or calculators or reports or so to the entire community under, let's say, rows.com/9X. Then they could do this here. Then you can also track how many views you get, how many duplications the spreadsheets get, and so on. And you can also embed it, which I'll get to in a moment. So if I do this link-based sharing, I can copy this link. Sorry, I need to manage my Zoom toggles here a little bit. And then I will see my spreadsheet like a web page. So this is now responsive. So if I shorten it, it adjusts itself to the size. I cannot see, as you can see, I cannot see any of the hidden stuff. I can still hover over the chart, but I can kind of move the data. But I can still use my input cell, yeah, so or my date picker. So if I now pick a different date, the chart updates automatically. Right? And now, if I go back to my editor to show you how the embedding works. So we have the embedding here under share, but we also have it here for any element. You can also copy the chart to your clipboard or export it as an image, for which we would have different options then. But let's say I want to embed it. Then I can either copy the only the URL or the entire iframe. So, and to show you how this works, for example, in Notion, can you see my Notion now? Yeah.
Yep, we see it.
If I just paste the link here and say create embed, then I will actually get my spreadsheet and in an iframe, and then I still need to size this properly. Sorry. Okay, and this is now also dynamic. So if I well, let's actually try this way. So if I now have both here side by side, and I pick another date, then my chart in Notion will also why it doesn't refresh? Okay, this is really odd. This never happened, but okay. So
well, we have a question, Torben, from the chat. Are the spreadsheets in Rows integrated somehow with the Google Sheets, or can they be exported and synced with Google Sheets?
So they are not per se integrated by Google Sheets or in Google Sheets. They are its own spreadsheet, right? We built our own spreadsheet platform. Unlike Google Sheets, we calculate in the cloud. So we calculate on a server. So it allows you also to set automations more easily and so on. Google Sheets calculates in your browser. But you can work with Google Sheets quite easily. So copy pasting works both ways. And we also have, for example, if you go under actions here and you write Sheets, for example, we actually have Google Sheets as an integration. So you can send data to Google Sheets, import data from Google Sheets, and also update data in Google Sheets. So you can actually make this work quite easily. We're also currently working on our own API, so which will be out in a beta version soon. So you can then I think also connect it without the integration in a more technical way. But in a more custom way too.
Amazing. And one more question, and I guess then we can keep moving on with the demo. So if someone's invited to see a chart that's been shared, like a live version, do they also need a Rows account, or can this be accessible to anyone?
So if I go back here, if I invite you as a guest or as a workspace member, you will also need a Rows account. If I publish it to the community, or if I use this link, you don't need a Rows account. Yeah. So those are, and if you embed it elsewhere, you don't need a Rows account either. Yeah.
Perfect.
So to go back to my editor, and actually let me just add a data point in here to. To see what's going on. So in my spreadsheet, this should actually, yeah, exactly. This added this data point. For the life of me, I do not understand what happened to my chart in Notion. Why it doesn't extend here? Because usually this little update here works perfectly. But okay, so now
it's because of Google, Torben. Let's put that on Google Cloud.
Exactly. Must be due to them.
Torben, just one more quick question, which is very similar to the Google. Do you also have any integrations with Microsoft Excel 360?
No, we do not. So in terms of to cover a couple of other input methods. So we actually have, before I get into the integrations, we do have. For those of you who are a bit more technical and who know how to interact with an API, we have the functions get, put, and post. So you can actually send web requests to any API that supports JSON. Okay, so if the API only works, for example, with XML, then no luck, unfortunately. But most APIs these days do support JSON, so and you can interact with them in any way in here. So the way this would work, I'm not going to go into detail right now. At least we can still cover this in the Q&A if there's kind of demand for it. But you would essentially write api.url.com, and then you can either pass a key as part of the URL, or you can also pass a key as a JSON. So we also have functions for this. So for example, we have this pair to JSON function where you could just write authorization, and then comma bearer, for example, and then a bearer key here, and this would work. Well, this URL doesn't work, but if I have, for example, if I write google.com, yeah, well, I get HTML back because it's not an API. But this, as a web request, this works. And then we have a bunch of integrations. So if I go here to our integrations menu, we have, for example, well, you can just get stock data, for example, or listed company information through AlphaVantage. But then we actually have some integrations that are useful for enrichment. So, for example, a company finder that allows you to get companies, search for companies, and enrich companies with the LinkedIn database. So you can get their location, industry, employee size, so on. A domain finder, Hunter, and so on. And so you have kind of those enrichment integrations, including maps, also an email finder or email validation, so on. You can also use it for marketing reporting, especially, I would say, because we have all the major integrations to your social media channels and to your paid channels. And we also have Google Analytics, Search Console, and page speed. And then in terms of databases, well, we have some CRM integrations. I can show you, for example, Salesforce in a moment, and Airtable and Google Sheets too. Yeah. So
I think we have a question from the audience, unless they accidentally hit the raise hand button. But Husnu, you've got a question?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Does it work now? Yeah, I think
now
you can hear me, right?
We only hear one of you now.
Awesome. My question was, since you were on the integrations part, it said always on for email finder and company finder. So are those like built-in default setups?
Yeah,
or
that's
is that only in your account? And if so, if they're built in, do you charge extra for those, or is it free?
Yes, they are built in. No, we do not charge extra. So you have, all those that are under always on, you can just sign up for an account and start using them. Just as normal functions, essentially, or you can also access them through this actions menu, like, for example, well, company finder, right? And you can say, search for companies, and you fill out this form with those optional parameters. And then you will get kind of a list of companies back, and you will actually not be charged for them. For the not always on integrations, you would somehow authenticate yourself, usually with the normal OAuth flow, right? So where you say connect and Rows can read and so on. Yeah. We in our current pricing, and our current pricing is kind of focused on these enrichment use cases. We actually, if you use us for reporting, we don't give you so much reason to upgrade yet. Obviously, you can if you want to support us. But on the enrichment flow, we actually price or we give you 10,000 integration tasks for free. So 10,000 actions that are either an integration, including the always on integrations, or a web request. Yeah.
Okay, I see. And then I guess it's usage based after some point.
Yes. So if you use more than 10,000 in a month, then we would ask you to upgrade.
And can I ask one more thing regarding this? Is it in the technical background, do you have then your own databases that you just access? Or if it says email finder, you have built in your own APIs that get it from external databases?
Great question. We actually use both, depending on the integration. Yeah. So for the company finder, we actually have our own database well, we built an API endpoint or endpoints on top of. And for others, we actually created, like also for the domain finder, for example, we created our own algorithms that use also third-party services or third-party APIs. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Just need to summarize what you were asking. Yes, you can use that for data enrichment, and yes, you're also using it at 9x for having free data enrichment before you start using other solutions.
All right.
Cool. Yes, it's an easy way to get in, but I would also want to convince you to use it as a full spreadsheet, including reporting and so on. And so what I still wanted to show you in here in this example. So well, let me actually kill this additional row that I created. If you, let's say you don't want to use this with manual input, so as an interactive app, but you just want a chart that is always on and that is always updated, then you can go back here to your action, say edit action, and in the date range, you actually take out this input and you choose, for example, the last 30 days, right? Then you go on update action, and what it does is it will update this function with, okay, well, this is again, I think, an unusual thing. So now it's updated. And what it did is it replaced the input with a little last X days function, right? So now I don't need this anymore. I can actually delete this table, and I can still use this table to write a schedule function, which sets up an automation, or technically speaking, a cron job. So if I now type, I want to update this every day at midnight, then this is now scheduled, or well, should be scheduled. If I refresh, I think it will be scheduled, yeah. And so now this will always run, right? So every day at midnight, it will pull data from Google Analytics, update my little table, update my chart, and I can just have this chart somewhere and access it as a report. Yeah.
And Torben, on that one. Sorry, Pete. So on this one, Torben, when you schedule it, does that mean that now if every time the page loads, like let's say you've got a live version, does that mean it's not actually refreshing the latest report? It's only based on the last schedule, or it's sort of doing both? It's like also when someone loads a page, it will resync with Google Analytics and also at midnight, or
No, we actually this is also it's a great question. This is a fundamental difference between us and Google. So when you load, your functions will not automatically re-execute. Okay. So if you, for example, have a function now, yeah, now Google is unfortunately letting me down. But if you have this function now, if I reload this page, it will not re-execute. Yeah, so
okay.
if I reload it, you see it's the same seconds. Only if I either manually re-execute it, or well through some sort of reference tree of formulas, or through an automation, then it will re-execute, right? So if I want to update times like today or now or so in rows, I would also have to put a schedule on top of them. Yeah.
Nice. But that's, I think, really smart, because I guess that way you also don't run into a lot of integration costs when someone's just refreshing your page all the time. It's not like a new.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so yeah, to give you a different example, let's say I want to get data from Salesforce. So I just like I did with Google Sheets, with Google Analytics, I see my integrations, and now if I search, for example, for anything that I can do with opportunities, like let's say I want to search for opportunities. Well, we don't use Salesforce internally, so we don't have that many opportunities in our account. It's just a test account. So if I now load the data, okay, this takes a little bit. Let's keep it open. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, now it actually did load the data, and but I lost my form, so I go on create data table in here, and now I can use any of my fields. Let's say name and amount and is closed is 1, maybe probability. And now I create this table. Yeah, really apologize. This it should be instantaneous, but I somehow always need to refresh the page. And if I edit this data table, I can also I also have different options. I could, for example, transpose it. So header is the first row, or a header is the first column. I also can choose to update the table. Then I would have to identify a key, for example, the name or the ID, and then whenever with the next call of the Salesforce action, the ID already exists, it would update that row. Otherwise, it would append, right? But here I will stay with the I can just close this because I didn't change anything. And now I can just create kind of some spreadsheet output that I want to have on top of it, like if I want to analyze this now and say, these are my opportunities, and I want to have the count and the amount, and now the total and the ones that are closed and the ones that I won, then I can just use my spreadsheet functions, right? So I can say, count A, this, okay, again. Then amount would be sum that. Okay, right now I unfortunately always need to manually refresh, and then I could, here for example, use count if and say, is it's closed, true. Now I get a response again that is instantaneous, which is nice. And here I would do the same with sum if, and use the amount as a sum range. Yeah. So like this, right? So you get the gist of it, I think, if you use spreadsheets. Yeah. So
yeah, I can say from using reports in Salesforce back then, it would have been such a dream to be able to just get that into a spreadsheet and do the reports this way. We do have some questions. I think Julie, you raised your hand. Julie.
Yeah, actually, it's Orla, and I just have a question. Is this a sync or is it a one-time download, the data?
This is a one-time download. So if you, whenever you execute the action, it will download the data again, right? And you can execute this either manually or through an automation, right? But it won't. So this is not based on webhooks or so. So or it's not a complete sync of your Salesforce data.
Okay.
So,
thanks.
Yeah. And I guess just like the Google Analytics integration you showed, you could also, for instance, have an input field at the top where someone could put a contact's email or something, right? And that would then always just pull their information, and it's sort of pulling the data each time.
I can also create a different view, for example, in here and say, well, I want to have a filtered view. And then I would say, well, name, for example, and I could create a drop-down list now that is based on a range of cells, and the range of cells is essentially my column A here. So I would have my drop-down, and I could also, well, search for something, right? And now I could use, for example, a filter function to filter my database that is in this different table, right? And then I could hide this list of full opportunities, and then I could only have this as a live view where users can filter their data also.
That's really cool. And we have a question in the chat as well. Do you need a specific Salesforce plan to use the row integration? Like, is there a premium API package, or anyone on the basic Salesforce can use it?
No, anyone on the basic Salesforce, to my knowledge, can use it. Yeah. So obviously we're a bit dependent on the pricing and how those services manage their APIs. So for example, we have one integration for translation, for example, that is DeepL. There, I know that not all accounts have API access, not even all the paid accounts. It's usually kind of a separate plan that you need to enable in your DeepL. Yeah, but in Salesforce, I think anyone can use this.
Yeah, I think in some cases it's also to do with the permissions that sort of admins are setting. So I guess if you're trying to use Salesforce and have an error, there's a high chance that maybe your user that you're trying to connect with doesn't have the necessary permissions. So then you'd need to, I guess, go and speak to your tech team or someone who's in charge of the account.
This happens quite sometimes with integrations like, for example, Instagram or Facebook ads or so, you know, where you have like complex permissioning on the third-party side.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that was all the questions from the chat. Is there anything else you want to demo for us, Torben?
Well, one thing that I would mention is you can turn any table into a form. Okay, what that means is, so let's say I add a table here again with my input field, and where I had my date picker. Now, if I turn this table into a form, this means that that the form will actually create independent instances of this table for every user. Yeah. So whenever you refresh the form, it will be empty again, or it will be in the state the editor left it in again. If you have 100 people, 100 people accessing the same link, they will all see the same form, which is empty, and they won't write on top of each other and so on. Yeah. And then you could use this, for example, filtered databases or for input. So you could create actually a form that that does its own calculations in this in the form itself, while it also pushes. For example, you can use a button or so then to let people click to push data out to well, either a database that you manage in Rows or that you actually send elsewhere, right? So yeah, that is something. Well, I think that a minority of users use, but they become very sticky because they build kind of, well, time management systems or order management systems where, for example, Airtable for some reason doesn't do the job well because they also want to visualize part of it, or they want to make API calls or so. So it usually gets a bit more complex, but it's something that is unique about Rows.
So a question there, so because we've seen now a couple of integrations where we're pulling data from an external source.
Yeah.
Are there already some inbuilt actions where we could send data, or it's then we need to use like the post and sort of make the query ourselves? Do you have like Slack notifications, or that you could send an email, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have, if you go here on your actions menu, and then you click on send or update data to a service, you have, well, for example, you can actually tweet, or you can send Slack messages. You can send data to Airtable or Google Sheets or your CRMs. You can also send emails or SMS, directly from the spreadsheet. So yeah, if you have, for example, well, we have a ton of Slack automations in here, and so you can just use the schedule function to pull in data, and then if something happens, or let's say on a regular basis, every Monday or so, you get certain data that you post to a Slack channel, right? That is quite easy to do. So I can just, like, if I type Slack here, I can just get a list of all my channels, well, create this data table with all my channels. So, and then, well, I could well, send or message user Slack, and well, or channel Slack, of course. Now I could just write Torben and send the message, and now my Slack bot will send me that message. Yeah, so that is actually quite easy. Or if you write emails or send emails from here, what is quite handy is, let's say I want to send an email. So, well, we have also Gmail, but you can also use our own integrated email that is also an always-on integration. Yeah. So if I do this, well, I can just write from Torben at Rows to, well, I can make the address an input, of course, with a drop down or something, right? But let's say it's also just Torben at Rows. If you want to send content, and especially if you want to send tables, you can, we have this function range to HTML, which allows you to send an entire spreadsheet range as well, essentially a rendered HTML table inside an email, right? So it will actually be neatly formatted. It's not perfect. There are some edge cases where it's actually, but it's it's very possible to just have like a table, send a table of data in emails as well.
That's really cool. Yeah, I guess it doesn't make sense to send a million rows in a rendered table, right? But if you just sort of have the month, week reporting, it'll look really nice.
Yeah.
Really cool. I guess since like one of the biggest strengths of Rows is the integrations that you have. So I'm just more interested to know, like, what's the process that you guys use to pick the next integrations, or like the direction? Do you have like a wish list from your users, or you're sort of trying to, I guess, go towards a niche of reporting, or how does that process look like for you?
Yes. So this process changed over time. So the first things that we put out were actually our web requests, get and post, and we just looked at at the types of URLs that people would post to. So and then we kind of tried to abstract from the difficulty of the web request and build some integrations. And this is how we first built these enrichment integrations, like for example, Clearbit also. But over time, it became clear to us that who really was more interested in a collaborative spreadsheet platform that is a bit more powerful were marketers and operations people. So we started focusing on what they wanted from us. So we built kind of this marketing integration suite. I think, well, we are still working on updating our Google Analytics integration to GA4. Then I think we will add a couple of more generic databases as well. So maybe BigQuery or Notion or so. I think those would be things that we would add with keeping kind of marketers and operations managers in mind. And as I said, we are also building our own API so that it just creates kind of, well, a lot more possibilities to kind of read data from rows and or write data to rows. And the API will actually, well, it will be about kind of reading from and writing to tables.
Yeah, really cool. It's amazing to the product that you've built. I think there was a hand raised. Husni, do you have another question, or was it a false hit?
It was just basically the same question, so it felt repetitive asking again.
No worries. Sorry to put you on the spot. Cool. Any other questions, guys, or Torben? Is there anything else that you want to show?
No, I think if you are well, obviously, if you want to speak about anything in particular, any use case, or if you need help with any part of Rows, we're very happy to help. Yeah, so just hit me up on torben@rows.com or on Twitter, for example. My DMs are open as well. If you want to give this a try, I think for reporting or for any internal tool that is where Rows lends itself to the use case, and also for the enrichment stuff and as a general spreadsheet, of course, right? Then happy to help.
And it's a very generous plan, just to reiterate again, that you can get started for free, completely free with those 10,000 operations. So definitely worth checking out. Maybe I can we'll just change the screen share, but while that, Piv, you've got a question?
Yes. So I think that's something we already discussed at length, Torben, but could be useful for the audience. I really believe that with Rows, what you're building here is potentially one of the missing dashboard or let's say light data warehouse solution from the no-code space. What would you say are what are the limits do you see? Because I've tried several times to build join data from Google Analytics and Salesforce and try to have do some little tiny data warehouse to calculate marketing attribution, stuff like this. And every time when I was doing that on Google Sheet, then I needed to have a super powerful MacBook Pro because as you said, the spreadsheet runs in your browser. So do you feel like with your formulas being running in the server, this is something that works and is a bit more smooth, and actually people can build let's say a first business-friendly data warehouse, or as long as you don't need proper data engineers? Is that one of the use cases you can see for Rows?
Yes, I think I think you can, and I think calculating on the server generally gives us more power than in purely web-based spreadsheets that calculate in the front end. I think. You can obviously, as many people do, use Rows as a database, right? I think, we do have an Airtable integration in case you're using a database, Airtable as a database, but need, for example, visualization or calculation on top of it, or embedded charts, embedded calculators or so somewhere, right? But yeah, I think generally we are working on making rows ever faster and ever more scalable. I think the speed is actually quite good already. The scale is limited currently to 100 rows per table, or well, 100,000 rows per table, and actually to 2 million cells. So you can't use kind of the 500 columns times 100,000 rows. Yeah, but yeah, I think the ability to calculate or to run on the server will definitely, in the long run, give us more advantages in terms of more scalability compared to other spreadsheets. Yeah. I think generally we see us as well as a spreadsheet, which is also an analytics and reporting tool. So it's kind of easier than your BI tool, but more powerful than your spreadsheet. Yeah. And yeah, that is kind of what we're focusing on now. In the we also are focused on making data transformation still easier. Well, you have all your spreadsheet functions. You have a query function now, but we're now evolving this over time into like pivot table-like functionality. Yeah, so this is something I think that will be important to add. And yeah, and I think one word on future pricing, because at the moment we're really only charging you if you enrich a lot of companies, for example. But in the future, we want to keep a free forever plan, but we will want to monetize around like lots of scale, so like many rows per table, or on, let's say, custom branding, white labeling options or so of the live view, and on premium control options like, you know, versioning
rights,
and premium permissions and SSO and so on. Yeah. So, but there will be kind of a free forever plan if you're kind of using it in a
okay, but that means that potentially there's going to be an enterprise plan coming up where I could have up to, I don't know, 1 million rows on my table, or like is that something that could be like, it could be on the timeline soon?
Well, soon may do a lot of work here, so it certainly won't be tomorrow, but in the future for sure. Yeah, absolutely. This is what we're working towards.
Okay. And sorry, because I think maybe you already mentioned that, but what's the frequency at which the dashboard which are published live refresh?
Sorry?
Like what's the frequency? Is it the dashboard that you publish live, they are refreshing every second, or like what's the?
Well, whenever you essentially trigger a new function, right? Or you can set the schedule up to 1 minute frequency. Okay. That in the future will probably be also something that will be part of the paid plan. So you will be able to run schedules in a certain frequency, but you will have to pay for another. Yeah. But yeah, at the moment, the fastest is 1 minute. So if you have machine data where you need milliseconds, I think that will be hard. But yeah.
Okay. And on the integration side, are you planning any Postgres connector or SQL connector, or is this something you have in mind?
Yes, I generally yes, yeah. But I think the first of these types of integrations will probably be BigQuery, and from there, which I see is not the same. We are getting lots of requests for also for Snowflake, Firebase, but then also for Postgres and MySQL. I think over time we will solve this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Minus points, Pete, for not listening about the scheduler. I think he covered it.
Yeah, I was a bit late. That's why.
No worries. No.
All good. Repetition is always good. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a great demo, and yeah, really amazing to see the tool that you guys have built.
Great. Thanks so much for joining, and have a great night, everyone.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Torben.